unexplored to this day due to their inaccessibility. So we've got a photograph at the top. Now where is this? So this is the so-called Magician's Pyramid located in the Mayan city of Uxmal. It's one of the world's most unusual pyramids. Are pyramids burial monuments? We may well think that in most cases pyramids are burial monuments. However, there is also evidence that there were other reasons for their construction. The pharaoh Snofru, father of the famed Cheops, for example, built 5 pyramids during his reign, which began in 2575 BC and continued an estimated 48 years. Among these are the Bent Pyramid, says C box on page 16, we'll have a look at that in a minute, and the Red Pyramid located in Dasha, Lower Egypt. Let's see if we can find this Bent Pyramid. There it is. One theory is that the pharaohs used these imposing structures to demonstrate their strength and power. Other researchers maintain that the pyramids were erected to facilitate astronomical observation. The plans of many of the pyramids are clearly oriented according to the four cardinal points of the compass, and we now know that Egyptian astronomy was a very highly developed science. This provides some support for the astronomical theory, although direct evidence is lacking. Naturally, there are also pyramids that quite clearly did serve as burial monuments, taking into account the fact that robbers plundered nearly all of the graves in the Valley of the Kings, with Tutankhamun's tomb the only exception. We can assume that over the course of the millennia, these highly visible superstructures also attracted thieves. In fact, nearly every pyramid known shows traces of break-ins. This would explain why there are rarely any burial gifts or mummies found. Building a pyramid. It is still not entirely clear how the ancients went about building a pyramid. These structures would be difficult to realise even with the modern construction methods available to us today. Given that so many pyramids have been built by such a wide variety of cultures, it's probable that more than one construction method was used. At the end of the 1980s, a French chemist named Joseph Davidovits published a theory stating that the stones of one of these pyramids, in this case an Egyptian pyramid, had been manufactured on location using a mixture of crushed limestone and other materials that were combined with water. This sludge would then be poured into a form made of wood, clay or brick that was set in the desired spot, where it would slowly harden into a block. For general application, however, this theory is easily disproved. Egyptian pyramids in particular show many examples of irregularly fitted, poorly laid stones. Nevertheless, it is certainly possible that this perfectly straightforward method was in use in other places. Now here is a photograph of the Step Pyramid of Djoser in Saqqara. It's one of Egypt's first monumental stone excavations go further, arguing that the ramp itself would later become part of the pyramid. Voids would be left during the construction phase that would later be closed by the ramp stones, although some recent evidence supports the use of a ramp. Definitive proof is still lacking, and in some cases a ramp can be completely excluded because there simply is not enough space available at the site. By the way, apologies for any banging that you might hear in the background. I'll try and edit it out if I can. But we have a storm outside today, and the branches of some of the trees in my garden are banging against the window. Yeah, it's a bit spooky. Rumours and riddles. Even pyramids that have been thoroughly investigated can still continue to harbour secrets. While there have always been rumours about the valuable treasures that might be found inside certain secret hallways and chambers, scholarship and excavations have at times contributed to the mystery rather than clearing it up. Their discoveries continually reaffirm suspicions that there is still more to be found within. While working within the Bent Pyramid, here it is, in 1839, for example, the British archaeologists John Shea Perring and Howard Weiss reported that the wind rushing through the passageways inside the pyramid wall was so strong and so cold at times that it was necessary to stop the excavation. Yet there was no connection between the interior of the pyramid and the outside world except for the passage through which the archaeologists had entered. In the 1950s, the Egyptian researcher Ahmed Fakhri mentioned sounds that could be heard inside the pyramid on windy days. The cause of both of these phenomena has not yet been explained. It's possible that other openings and additional rooms are allowing air to enter, which then circulates within the pyramid's interior, causing drafts and noise. There are also claims that all the pyramids throughout the world are oriented to the north, and that this implies they were all erected according to a global plan. This particularly persistent rumour is nevertheless very easily explained. Nearly all the Egyptian pyramids are orientated according to the cardinal points of the compass because of the long-standing Egyptian interest in astronomy. All other pyramids from more recent centuries that follow the Egyptian model were probably not consciously oriented in this fashion, or orientated, as I would say. The claim that the pyramids were built to serve as oversized sundials is also without merit. After all, some pyramids have shadows that fall on ravines or rivers. In addition, because of their base width, the shadows cast by pyramids are not particularly well suited to defining a single point on a solar clock. Finally, it is claimed that the pyramids were constructed according to a strict formula, whereby the base area would permit the calculation of the pyramid's height. The example of the Bent Pyramid proves this false. It is not the area of the base that is crucial basis for an expansion of knowledge in a number of different fields. This in turn contributed to the development of the society as a whole. We now know that new professions came into existence and developed right on the building site. Doctors cared for the injured. Bones found show that breaks were well healed, indicating the presence of good medical care at the site. Bakers, supplying the workers with food, exchanged ideas and acquired experience. There were even administrators who, by means of writing found on stone tablets, kept track of how long individual workers were employed. In the depths of the pyramid. Now here in this photograph we have the Sphinx, of course. It is often said that many pyramids hide exceptional treasures. For the Great Pyramid of Giza, this statement has practically been accepted as fact. According to legend, in fact, there is a chamber underneath the pyramid that contains a library in which all the wisdoms of ancient Egypt is yet preserved. That would be great if it was true, wouldn't it? When it became evident at the end of the 1980s that some of the stones of the Great Pyramid were becoming mouldy due to their exposure to human perspiration, a climate control system was installed there. After work in the King's Chamber was successfully carried out, the Queen's Chamber proved to be more problematic. Unlike the King's Chamber, the shafts leading to the Queen's Chamber did not connect to the outside, but to dead ends. A robot was sent into the passageways to investigate. In the south shaft, the robot unexpectedly ran into stones, decorated with two linear markings that blocked its path. originally settled there. After they fell, the Nabateans settled on this site in the 3rd century BC. Under their control, Petra, or Sela, became one of the most important trade centres in the Near East. The majority of the buildings, cut directly into the cliffs, were built by the Nabateans, or at least brought here into their present form passages had collapsed over time and others were blocked off, it was obvious that what was buried here was much more than a simple underground cave. In fact, as became clear after extensive excavation, there was an entire city built in that deep hole beneath the surface, occupying multiple levels, shafts and passageways that led ever deeper into the earth, many of which could be shut off by large millstone-sized rounded stones. This led at first to the conclusion that Derinkuyu was a kind of emergency housing or refugee shelter, yet the longer the investigation continued, the clearer it became that much more was involved. The dimensions of the complex were simply too vast for a shelter or hiding spot. In the course of the excavation, houses, storage rooms, wine cellars and shops were discovered, as well as hall-like rooms in which school was presumably held. The city included an underground church, some 215 feet long, as well as spaces that could have been used as stables. Altogether, the area of the underground city was approximately 1.5 square miles, with 13 stories excavated so far. Additional levels are expected to be found as work continues. Wow. The lowest floor lies at a depth of 290 feet below the earth. According to estimates, more than 20,000 people could have lived here comfortably. The planning and construction of the hidden exits and thousands of air shafts was so well thought out, and the passageways so extensive, that it can hardly be considered a hurried, temporary solution. On the other hand, the arrangement that permitted the passages to be shut off by large rocks, along with the common rooms and complex ventilation system, the latter also potentially useful as a communication system, has led some to conclude that the people of Derinkuyu feared persecution. Is this city unique? After the sensational discovery of Derinkuyu, additional underground cities were sought out with considerable success. In this Turkish region of Cappadocia, with 30 cities of this type now identified, it would seem to follow that there are more that still exist, or did exist at one time. This theory is supported by the fact that some of the passageways lead out of the underground city zone, perhaps as part of a network connecting with other cities. Most of the complexes are now either filled with fallen debris or are impassable for other reasons. Derinkuyu, Kaimakli and Ozgonak are the three sites where excavations have made the most progress. Some sections of the underground passageways and spaces are now open to tourists. But Cappadocia is not the only place where underground cities exist. Settlements between the surface of the earth have been found worldwide. It is estimated that there either were or still are between 300 and 500 of these cities all over the world. The origins of the underground city. Some archaeologists believe that with its church and baptismal basin, Derinkuyu must have been a city whose inhabitants were persecuted because of their Christian faith. Other theories exist, most of which are questionable for various reasons. The suggestion that the people living underground were seeking protection from invaders during wartime, or were fleeing from the lava flow of an erupting volcano, is existence of the earth shafts, which almost certainly would have been blocked by enemies or filled in with lava, bringing certain death to everyone below. A further point offers strong support for the persecuted Christians theory, namely that every single one of the underground cities investigated thus far has included churches. We now know that underground cities first appeared with the Phrygians approximately 3,000 years ago. Whether they are also responsible for the construction of these underground complexes is not yet clear. There is some evidence that the Hittites or the Hittites were the original master builders, while the surrounding cities of Bogaskoi and Alaka-Hoyak fell in fiery conflagration. No such evidence is found in Derinkoyu. Sand in the passageways and cattle in the meadows. Derinkoyu and many of the other underground cities remained undiscovered for such a long time, in part because after they were abandoned, their shafts and passageways were purposely filled in with sand and rubble. Why this was done has remained unexplained because there are no records at all of these operations, although one would think, under normal circumstance, that accounts of such extensive work within a very large complex would have been written down somewhere. One suggestion is that the city was abandoned and filled in with debris in order to permit service cities to be built above them on solid ground without the danger of cave-ins. This idea would make sense because, as is clear from the existence of underground animal stalls, if those living below the surface wanted to survive, some above-ground activity was required. While cattle could be kept underground, it would nevertheless still be necessary to bring them to the surface to graze. This brings us back to the question of why a population made such an effort to build their city underground at all. What was their motivation for such extensive underground construction? Who were the people who built the intricate passageways and galleries? And finally, how did they dig and carry away stone, rubble and earth to create passageways extending nearly 20 stories deep into the earth? All of these questions remain unanswered. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of reading about pyramids and Petra and underground cities. This has